Africa, The Passing of the Golden Ages by John Henrik Clarke. 1. The Early Beginnings. It can be said with a strong degree of certainty that Africa has experienced three golden ages, the first two of which reached their climax and began to decline before Europe emerged as a significant entity in human society. Africa's first golden age commenced at the dawn of humanity, with the birth of man and the development of organized societies. It is widely acknowledged in scholarly circles that mankind originated in Africa, making the African man the father and the African woman the mother of humanity. In his book, The Progress and Evolution of Man in Africa, Dr. L.S.B. Leakey writes, "In every country that one visits and where one is drawn into a conversation about Africa, the question is regularly asked by people who should know better, but what has Africa contributed to world progress?" The critics of Africa forget that men of science today, with few exceptions, are satisfied that Africa was the birthplace of man himself, and that for many hundreds of centuries thereafter, Africa was in the forefront of all human progress. In the early development of humanity, the family was the most critical unit. Through the ages, its importance has remained unchanged. The first human societies were formed to meet the needs and ensure the survival of the family. Early Africans crafted hooks for fishing, spears for hunting, and knives for various tasks. They innovated in building shelters, gathering and cultivating food, and domesticating animals. The use of fire, a practice we continue today, was pioneered by these early Africans through their mastery of fire control. By creating tools, a hallmark that distinguishes humans from other creatures, Africans set humanity on the path of tool making. The discovery of metals and their applications propelled Africa forward significantly. Learning to extract iron from the earth and forge it into spears and tools, African iron cultures spread rapidly across the continent, influencing nearly every region. These Iron Age cultures reached their pinnacle in the area now known as Eastern Sudan, particularly in the great city-state of Meroe. The use of iron accelerated African development, but also introduced a new danger: the use of iron weapons in warfare. 2. The Nile Valley Civilization. The rise. The Nile River became a vital cultural highway, facilitating the movement of peoples and cultures from inner Africa. These migrations led to the establishment of one of the greatest nations in world history, Egypt. In his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race, from 4500 BC to 2000 AD, Afro-American historian Chancellor Williams refers to Egypt as Ethiopia's oldest daughter, citing evidence of the Southern African origins of early Egyptian people and their civilization. Egypt emerged as an organized nation around 6000 BC. A significant period of medical and architectural advancement occurred during the Third Dynasty, 5345 to 5307 BC, under the ambitious pharaoh Zoser. Zoser's chief counselor, Imhotep, a brilliant commoner whose name means "he who cometh in peace," constructed the famous step pyramid of Saqqara near Memphis. The innovative building techniques used in this pyramid revolutionized ancient world architecture. Egypt produced some of humanity's greatest personalities, with Imhotep standing out as a singular figure. As the world's first multi-genius, he left an indelible mark on ancient Egyptian history. Imhotep is recognized as the true father of medicine. In his book, Evolution of Modern Medicine, London, 1921, Sir William Osler describes Imhotep as the first figure of a physician to stand out clearly from the mists of antiquity. The period from the Third Dynasty to the first invasion of Egypt by the Hyksos, or Shepherd Kings, in 1700 BC represents the apex of Africa's first golden age. The Western Asian domination lasted approximately 120 years and was ended by the rise of Egyptian nationalism during the 17th dynasty. The pharaohs at Thebes consolidated their power and launched a united campaign to expel the Hyksos from Lower Egypt. Under Pharaoh Ahmose I, the invaders were driven out, ushering in the splendid 18th dynasty and the beginning of Egypt's second golden age. This golden age extended beyond Egypt to include nations like Kush and Ethiopia, often one and the same during certain periods, which were the cultural progenitors of early Egypt. By this time, Egypt had surpassed its cultural origins and was once again the world's most advanced nation. 3. The Nile Valley Civilization, the glory. Monumental rulers rose to power during this period, including Queen Hatshepsut and her brother Thutmose III. Great temples were constructed throughout Egypt, employing hundreds of artists and craftsmen and paving the way for the artistic glories that followed. Under Thutmose III, Egypt's influence extended to Western Asia, now known as the Middle East, continuing an age of grandeur. A significant shift occurred around 1386 BC when Queen T gave birth to a son initially named Amenhotep after his father. Little is known of his childhood except that he was frail and developed interests in art, poetry, and religion. His closest companion was Nefertiti, his beautiful cousin, sometimes referred to as his sister by archaeologists. At around age 21, Amenhotep married Nefertiti, and 3 years later, his aging father, Amenhotep III, named him co-regent, crowning him Amenhotep IV. After his father's death, he assumed full power and took the name Akhenaten. Known as the heretic king, Akhenaten was one of history's most extraordinary monarchs. 1,300 years before Christ, he preached and lived a gospel of love, brotherhood, and truth, earning him the title of the world's first idealist and the first temporal ruler to guide his people toward monotheism. When Akhenaten ascended the throne over 3,000 years ago, Egypt dominated the world. However, Egypt's golden age gradually waned. The pride and splendor of the 18th and 19th dynasties gave way to internal strife and confusion. Wars of conquest and colonization depleted Egypt's military and economic strength. Meanwhile, southern nations grew more powerful and began to prey on Egypt, their former master. Around 900 BC, Ethiopia re-emerged on the world stage, represented by a queen known as Makeda or Belkis, better known as the Queen of Sheba. J.A. Rogers, in World's Great Men of Color, describes her journey. Out of the mists of 3,000 years emerges this beautiful love story of a black queen who, attracted by the fame of a Judean monarch, made a long journey to see him. Sylvia Pankhurst in Ethiopia, A Cultural History, adds, the history of the Queen of the South, who undertook a long and arduous journey to Jerusalem in order to learn of the wisdom of King Solomon, is deeply cherished in Ethiopia as part of the national heritage, for she is claimed as an Ethiopian queen, Makeda, a woman of splendid beauty who introduced the religion and culture of Israel to her own land. By the 10th and 9th centuries BC, Egypt was weakened by external attacks and internal disputes between priests and royal families. This allowed the Kushites to the south to gain independence and confidence, enabling them to move northward and conquer their former masters. Despite this conquest, the Kushite or Ethiopian kings ushered in Egypt's last age of grandeur and social reform. Their rule restored Egypt's declining culture and economy, elevating the nation to unprecedented heights of leadership and social welfare. Though a colony, Egypt once again became a world power. 4. The Nile Valley Civilization, the decline. The Assyrian invasion of 671 BC drove the Kushite forces south and initiated a period of harsh misrule that eroded Egypt's grandeur. As Egypt declined, Greece, a young nation across the Mediterranean, began to rise around 500 BC. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great, a student of Aristotle, invaded Egypt, the first purely European invasion of Africa. The aftermath, coupled with European interest in dominating Mediterranean trade, led to the Punic Wars and Roman invasions. In Egypt, a shrewd young woman, Cleopatra, attempted to navigate her country's plight under the threat of Roman domination. Contrary to popular portrayals, Cleopatra was not white or Greek, but a distinctly African woman, dark in color. Until the rise of white superiority doctrines, she was depicted as such. Shakespeare, in Antony and Cleopatra, calls her tawny, a term used for mulattoes in his time. In the book of Acts, Cleopatra describes herself as black. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra ascended the throne at 18, sharing power with her brother, Ptolemy XIII. As a Roman protectorate, Egypt was rife with internal strife. Cleopatra aligned with Julius Caesar, who bolstered her authority. Their political and sexual relationship aimed to shield Egypt from the worst of Roman domination. After Caesar's murder, Cleopatra, still in her early 20s, began a politically motivated love affair with Mark Antony. Antony's devotion led him to betray Rome in an attempt to save Egypt, but after his death, Octavian assumed control. Without a protector, Cleopatra committed suicide. Following Cleopatra's death, Egypt became a Roman colony, subject to harsher Roman rule. In the untouched southern lands, new civilizations arose, and black women resumed prominent roles in history. While the Second Golden Age ended, other African regions continued to shine. The oppressive aspects of Roman rule prompted Africans and Middle Easterners to question old gods, leading to the rise of Christianity and later Islam, religions of the oppressed. When Romans adopted Christianity, they altered its essence, and dissatisfaction in their North African and Middle Eastern colonies facilitated Islam's spread. 5. The civilizations of the Western Sudan, Ghana. In the 6th and 7th centuries AD, Roman control over North Africa and the Middle East weakened. African ingenuity in state building and societal creation was reborn in the Western Sudan, inner West Africa, marking the start of Africa's third golden age. The first great empire to gain external recognition was Ghana, originating as a small settlement in the 2nd century AD and evolving into a state with over 1,000 years of recorded history. Known in Europe and Arab countries for its gold wealth, Ghana attracted Arabs and later Europeans. It reached its zenith under King Tenkamenen, who ascended in 1062 AD. His stone and wood palace was fortified for defense, and the empire was well organized with a military force of 200,000 men. Its political progress and social well-being rival Europe's best kingdoms of the time. In 1076 AD, the Almoravids, led by Abu Bakr of the Soso Empire, invaded Ghana in a holy war, ending its prosperity and cultural development. Though its character persisted, Ghana regained independence in 1087 without recovering its former strength. Its ruins formed the kingdoms of Diarra and Soso, later absorbed into the Mali and Songhai empires. The drama of state building, trade, and power unfolded in Timbuktu, the queen city of the Western Sudan. 200 miles down the Niger, Gao, founded in the 7th century, served as the capital of the Songhai Empire. Both cities thrived on trans-Saharan trade during the era of North African caravans, reaching their peak in the 15th and 16th centuries. During this period, Timbuktu was the intellectual hub of the Songhai Empire, with the University of Sankore as the educational capital of the Western Sudan. Felix Dubois, in Timbuktu the Mysterious, writes, "The scholars of Timbuktu yielded in nothing to the saints and their sojourns in the foreign universities of Fez, Tunis, and Cairo. They astounded the most learned men of Islam by their erudition. That these Negroes were on a level with the Arabian savants is proved by the fact that they were installed as professors in Morocco and Egypt. In contrast to this, we find that the Arabs were not always equal to the requirements of Sankora." 6. The civilizations of the Western Sudan, Mali. In 1324, Emperor Mansa Musa of Mali stopped in Timbuktu en route to Mecca, traveling with an entourage of 60,000, including 12,000 servants and 500 bondsmen carrying gold staffs. His 280 camels bore 2,400 pounds of gold, which he distributed as alms and gifts. He returned with an architect who designed grand buildings in Timbuktu and beyond. To the late medieval world, Mansa Musa was more than an individual. He was Africa. He conquered the Songhai Empire, rebuilt the University of Sankore, and became a symbol of Africa's mystery and wealth, appearing on every map. As one of the most colorful black kings of the 14th century, his legacy endured nearly 2 centuries after his death. 7. The civilizations of the Western Sudan, Songhai. After Mansa Musa's death, the Mali Empire declined, and Songhai rose under its greatest king, Askia the Great, Mohammed Toure, who assumed power in 1493, a year after Columbus reached America. Askia consolidated territories conquered by Soni Ali, building Songhai into the Western Sudan's most powerful state, reportedly larger than Europe. Henry Barth, in Travels and Discoveries in North and Central Africa, calls Askia one of the most brilliant and enlightened administrators of all times. He reorganized Songhai's army, enhanced banking and credit systems, and transformed Gao, Walata, Timbuktu, and Jenny into intellectual centers. Timbuktu, with over 100,000 residents, was described as filled to the top with gold and dazzling women. Askia fostered scholarship and literature. Students from across the Muslim world studied grammar, law, and surgery at Sankore, while scholars from North Africa and Europe consulted Timbuktu's historians and writers. A Sudanese literature flourished with numerous books written. Leo Africanus notes, "In Timbuktu, there are numerous judges, doctors, and clerics, all receiving good salaries from the king. He pays great respect to men of learning. There is a big demand for books and manuscript imported from Barbary, North Africa. More profit is made from the book trade than from any other line of business." Alexander Chamberlain, in The Contribution of the Negro to Human Civilization, praises Askia in personal character, in administrative ability, in devotion to the welfare of his subjects, in open-mindedness towards foreign influences, and in wisdom in the adoption of enlightened ideas and institutions from abroad. King Askia was certainly the equal of the average European monarch of the time and superior to many of them. 8. The civilizations of the Western Sudan, the decline. After Askia the Great's death in 1538, Songhai began to weaken. In 1591, Moroccan forces, equipped with European firearms and led by Sultan El Mansour, captured Timbuktu and Gao, devastating the Western Sudan. The plundering army caused anarchy, destroying the University of Sankore, which had stood for over 500 years, and exiling its faculty to Morocco. Among them was Ahmed Baba, a prolific scholar with a library of 1,600 books, who authored over 40 works on theology, astronomy, ethnography, and biography. Timbuktu exemplifies the struggles of West African states to preserve their golden age. Arabs, Berbers, and Tuaregs from the north showed no mercy. Timbuktu had been sacked by Tuaregs in 1433, occupied for 30 years, plundered again between 1591 and 1593, and looted once more from 1723 to 1725, 1726. Once a city of over 200,000 and the center of a powerful state, Timbuktu declined into a shadow of its former glory. West Africa entered a period of decline under Moorish occupation, marked by wreck and ruin. When Europeans arrived and observed these conditions, they erroneously assumed that order and value had never existed in these regions. This mistaken impression, perpetuated for over 400 years, has shaped interpretations of African and Afro-American history,